Chairman, it's Angela, meeting producer. We're now live.
It is live. Thank you, Sarah and Angela. We'll get started then, and hopefully Councillor Evans can join us before the meeting starts proper. Welcome everybody to Cornwall Council Strategic Planning Committee meeting on Thursday, the 5th of November 2020. What I'll do before we actually start the meeting proper, I will read out this bit of information. Before consideration of today's business, I'll outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I will adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences any technical issue, I will adjourn for a short period to try to re-establish their connection. As I call members to speak, I will remind them to switch on your microphone, and if for some reason you cannot be heard, the the vote be taken by roll call of committee members by the Democratic. We have public speakers at the meeting today, and they will be joining the meeting by telephone. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or any interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at an appropriate time. To confirm the procedure for today's meeting is that members of the committee who wish to speak on an item should indicate by raising their hand, and when they finish speaking, please put their hands down. Before we start today's business, I will ask the Democratic Services Officer to ask the committee members to confirm that they are present and state their electoral division.
Thank you, Chairman. Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services. Members, when I call your name, could you please confirm your name and your electoral division? Councillor Bastin. Councillor Bastin?
Oh, sorry, having trouble with the microphone. Good morning, Sarah. John Bastin, Constantine, Morland and Budok.
Thank you. Councillor Batters?
Good morning, Sarah. Chris Batters, Llanivit Blisland Division.
Councillor Malcolm Brown?
Good morning. Malcolm Brown, St Austell, Bethel.
Councillor Bull?
Good morning. Jackie Bull, St Austell, Poltaire.
Councillor Dyer?
Yeah, John Dyer, Chase Water as far as this is concerned today, and right at the end of what was the Chase Water to Newquay branch line. And I consider I know an awful lot about this branch line because I went to school on it for 6 years to Redruth Grammar School. End of
Thank
story.
you, Councillor Dyer. Thank you, Councillor Dyer. Councillor Evans hasn't been able to join us yet as he has a technical issue. Councillor Foote.
Mittendar, good morning everyone. Jesse Foote speaking, Cornwall Councillor for the St Germans and Landulp Division.
Councillor Greenslade.
Hello all, Fred Greenslade, St Denis and Nanpane Division.
Councillor Hurd.
Good morning, John Hurd, Councillor for Camborne Pendorvis Division.
Councillor Nicholas.
Good morning, Councillor Sue Nicholas, Marizine and Perranethno Division.
Councillor Olivier.
Good morning, Councillor Olivier, Penzance Central Division. Could I just clarify if you want us to have our cameras on at the same time as we speak, or is it okay to just unmute when we're speaking?
Councillor Olivier, it's entirely up to you. If you'd like to put your camera on when you speak, that's perfectly acceptable.
Right. Okay, I always think a bit of facial expression helps reinforce the point you're making. So, right. Okay, thanks.
And Councillor Rand.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Julian Rand, Cornwall Councillor for St Kevin and Monique Division.
And we have our chairman, Councillor Kaczmarek.
Yeah, Councillor Mark Kaczmarek, elected member for Caharrock, Gwynedd and St Day.
And Vice Chairman, Councillor Parsons.
Hello all, Adrian Parsons, divisional member for the Alton area.
And we also have the following officers present today.
Sorry, Sarah, you forgot myself, Councillor Long.
Oh, apologies, Councillor Long. Could you confirm your electoral division, please?
Yeah, it's Middendale, your Councillor Andrew Long, Callington Division.
Thank you. And we also have present the following officers today. Matt Stevenson, Planning Group Leader. Matt Doble, Principal Development Officer. Jackie Smith, Sustainable Drainage Lead Officer. Hugh Gibbon, Principal Development Officer Highways. Ben Kerno, Senior Lawyer. Angela Saunders, Democratic Services Meeting Producer, and myself, Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services and Clerk to the committee. Back to you.
Thank you for that, Sarah. Okay, on the agenda today, first item is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
We've received no apologies for absence. We just have the ongoing technical issue with Councillor Evans.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Do you have any? None? You got your hand up, Sarah. Oh.
Apologies, Chairman.
Okay, no declaration of interest. Item 3 on the agenda is the minutes held on the 5th of March and the 10th of September 2020. We'll do them all in one go. So pages 1 to 7. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? Can we have a vote that are true and accurate record? Adrian Parsons, you got your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, not to be one who usually is picky on the minutes. On page 2, below resolved, it says Councillor May thanked members for his election. I don't believe Councillor May was at the meeting, and I think it possibly should be Councillor Parsons.
Councillor Parsons, I'll make that amendment.
Thank you.
Chairman, can you ask for a proposer and a seconder for the minutes, please?
Can we have a proposer and a seconder? These are true and accurate
Happy
record,
to propose.
please?
Happy to second or propose.
Okay. All those in favour, raise your hand, please. On the toolbar.
Chairman, if it's okay with you, can I do the vote on the minutes by roll call?
Okay, fine.
Thank you. Just to be consistent, members, thank you very much. If you could let me know using your microphone if you are for, against or abstaining on the minutes. I'll call you in turn alphabetically. Councillor Bastin.
For.
Councillor Batters.
For.
Brown.
For.
Bull.
For.
Dyer.
For.
Evans. Sorry, not present. Foot.
For.
Greenslade.
Abstain, Chairman. Councillor May substituted for me.
Hurd.
For.
Kasmarek. Councillor Kasmarek.
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor Nicholas.
I'm abstaining because I'm now replacing John Fitter and I wasn't at those meetings.
Olivier.
I'll abstain because I wasn't at one of those meetings.
Parsons.
Like Councillor Olivier, I wasn't at the first meeting, so I'll abstain from that one.
And Councillor Rand.
I was at both, so I'm happy to support it. I'm for.
Chairman, I can confirm that the minutes have been agreed as a true record of those two meetings.
Okay, thank you for that. Item 4 on the agenda, applications for consideration is 5.1, which is PAT/05207, Saints Trail, Perranporth to Newquay, Phase 1, pages 8 to 68. Proposal for a new multi-use trail between Station Road, Perranporth and the A392 Newquay. The case officer on this one is Matt Doble. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, Matt, we can hear you fine. Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services.
Okay,
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, that's fine. I'll carry on the presentation. So just before we start, I draw members' attention to the addendum update, which was previously circulated. That includes some consultee comments, further representations, and also recommends that delegated authority is given to the Service Director for Planning and Sustainable Development to proceed with issuing the decision once the Planning Casework Unit has concluded their assessment that an EIA is not required. Just to make it clear to members, there is a third-party request direct to the Secretary of State for screening direction on this application under the Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations, and that is currently being considered by the Planning Casework Unit. So just moving on now to the presentation for the key issues. Key issue is the benefit of an off-road multi-use trail at a low gradient, facilitating active travel and associated health benefits, with the additional benefits of associated shift from private motor vehicle use and obviously reduced carbon emissions from that. The impact upon the character and appearance of the area, designated heritage assets and landscape value. The impact upon the removal of trees and habitats, and the replacement of trees and ecological implications, and the mitigations and enhancements that are proposed. This application proposes to compensate above what will be lost and deliver a biodiversity net gain of 10%, which is above the policy requirement. Surface water management, and the final sort of key issue is impact upon amenities and neighbouring properties. Just moving on now to the location plan. You'll see that the red line indicates the areas that are currently being considered as part of this application. It's a 15.5 kilometre route, and you'll see there are some designations on the screen. Once we go through the specific sections on the plans, I'll highlight which designations are relevant to that particular section. And now just a site plan, just zoomed in slightly closer. So as you can see, starting from west to east, the application site starts in Perranporth, travels through Belingy and Cox up towards Goonhaven on the disused railway line through Goonhaven. The works within the highway have already been undertaken within Goonhaven, and then from Goonhaven again, following the disused railway line up through Shepherds and Fiddler's Green out towards Newlyn Holt, before going around Lapper Valley, tourist attraction, and up to Benny Mill. The phase between Benny Mill and Trewery will be a subsequent application which will follow in due course. And then from Trewery Mill, the alignment follows the disused railway cutting before branching off slightly and heading in towards Newquay. And this is just an aerial plan of that previous slide. Now moving on to the proposed plans. So this is starting again from west to east. This is Perranporth. So the route will commence within the car park just to the south of the co-op and just opposite the fire station in Perranporth, through the sort of compacted sort of additional overspill area of that car park. And the proposed surface of the trail would be asphalt, so a bound surface that would lead around the back of the pumping station up towards the ramp of an existing footbridge, and then onto the flood embankment. The embankment or the bund would be widened to provide a 3 metre wide path, and that widening would occur through the use of gabion baskets. The site area is within or just to the edge of Belingy Marsh, County Cornwall Wildlife Site, but the assessments undertaken demonstrate that there will be no adverse impacts upon Belingy Marsh, Cornwall Wildlife Site. And this image just gives you an indication of the bund within Station Road, Perranporth, so sort of the start of the trail in Perranporth, and it would be that section which is widened by the use of gabion baskets to provide a 3 metre wide trail width on top of the bund. Just moving on now, so we come off of the bund onto New Road and cross New Road and onto an existing part of a grassed area next to Belingy Stream. Again, the surface 3 metre wide and and a bound asphalt surface. And towards the end, just at Belingy, we cross the watercourse there on a structure known as Belingy Rise, which I'll just show you now on the next slide. So it's in this area that a bridge structure is proposed above the existing archway. There's a proposal to introduce additional tree planting in this area to compensate for that loss, and that tree mix is indicated as being oak, hawthorn, hazel and alder. The bridge itself would be a steel structure, post and rail, with the ramps either side being a timber post and rail structure. It would have gabion walls for support. Upon leaving that area and leaving Belingy, the trail would travel towards Cox Viaduct via the bone mill. Again, the surface would be a bound asphalt and would cross over the river using a timber bridge structure, which I'll show you in the next slide. So again, this just gives you a typical example of the area the trail would go through. And again, the bone mill bridge structure, you can see just a simple timber structure that will span the river there to allow access onto the other side. And from that point, it will continue to the eastern side of the river up to the bone mill ramp, which will be upgraded. This is an unbound section, and it will go on from there to meet Bone Mill Road at Cox through an existing area of woodland. So once we've travelled through Cox on a section of the highway, we reach Cox Viaduct and Reen Rose. So there's an opportunity for corridor planting in this area along the railway cutting or railway disused section, and additional dormice boxes, deadwood planting for invertebrate bats and bird opportunities. There'll be habitat enhancement from tree felling, coppicing and log planting. And we utilise the existing bridge crossings and the Cox Viaduct. You can see the picture in the centre of the screen there. That is taken on top of Cox Viaduct, just to give you an idea of the existing situation and circumstances of the bridge structure. Moving on from that area, we continue towards Goonhaven at the Reen Rose area. There'll be boundary enclosures to the northern side adjacent to neighbouring properties to provide some privacy screening. It's an unbound path. There'll be interplanting proposed of willow, hawthorn and blackthorn, and there'll be a new bridge structure at the road crossing, which I'll show you in the next slide. And this is that bridge crossing. So this provides a connection point between the Cox Viaduct side and Goonhaven. There will be an additional ramp that's proposed to provide access from the Reen Rose direction from the north. It's a metal structure with ramps either side to provide clearance above the highway. That clearance is 5.7 metres headroom to allow for traffic to pass underneath. It's a steel bridge with timber ramps at either side. From there, we travel onwards towards Goonhaven, following the disused railway line. Again, close boarded fences when we come into Goonhaven to provide privacies to the nearest neighbouring properties. There's also additional hedgerow planting proposed. It's an unbound surface until we meet the highway in Goonhaven. The highway works within Goonhaven do not form part of the planning application, have already been undertaken under highway authority powers. And then just the next section within Goonhaven. So again, within the highway and within the recreation ground, these works have been undertaken or can be undertaken under permitted development rights. And from that area, we enter into, or we rejoin the cutting again, or the disused railway, and we travel through Cornwall County Wildlife Site, where there will be removal of Japanese knotweed within the railway line. Additional proposals include hedgerow planting, wet woodland and wetland enhancements, and heathland planting to compensate for the impacts upon Cornwall County Wildlife Site. This has been referred to as the Hulett Road cutting, so we continue out of Cornwall County Wildlife Site, heading towards sort of Shepherd's Fiddler Green, continues on an embankment. Existing public rights of way crossing points are retained by existing field gates. So anyone using the rights of way can join the trail at this point. In terms of enhancements, it's detailed with proposed dormouse boxes, hedge planting and habitat enhancement from tree felling, coppicing and log piling. Next section is Lanteague. Again, there's existing post and wire fencing which will be upgraded to provide some dog proofing. So some mesh along the bottom of those existing fences, they may be upgraded. And again, it's an unbound surface of 3 metre width. Heading out of Lanteague now towards Shepherds. Proposal will go underneath an existing road bridge. So it's within a cutting underneath the highway. Again, an unbound surface. Now heading towards Shepherds. So again, it's an existing unbound surface that eventually continues onto an existing farm track. That farm track will be resurfaced with a compacted unbound material. And then towards Shepherds itself. So the trail will diverge from the disused railway line, which is currently a farm track, just to provide that separation between farm vehicles and users of the trail. So the trail will pass immediately to the south before then crossing over the highway at Shepherds and going to the west of the former railway line, before it will drop down a ramp and rejoin the disused railway line to the north of Shepherds. Again, it returns to the unbound surface at that point. It then travels underneath the highway just to the south of Fiddler's Green under an existing road bridge, and starts to pass through Newlyn Downs, Triple SI and Special Area of Conservation. Just to make members aware, the cutting itself is not within either of those designations. The designations are either to the north and south. It's proposed that coppice management to increase plant diversity and create structural layers is included in this area. Post and wire fencings exist in this location. They'll be upgraded with some additional post and wire fencing with dog-proof mesh to prevent access by dogs. It's on an embankment as it comes towards Penhallow, and the public right-of-way crossing at Penhallow will be retained and gated. There'll be a separate gate access for the property, farm gate access, and then 2 separate pedestrian gate accesses for users of the right-of-way. And again, close boarded fence in that location provide privacy to the nearest residential occupants. And as we leave Penhallow, we head towards Newlyn Holt. There's a new interchange structure proposed in this area to span over the existing abutments. Again, close boarded fence into the nearest residential properties to provide some privacy. And just after the interchange, which I'll show you in the next slide, just to give you an idea of the structure in that area, the trail will divert off the former railway line, because that is the southernmost end of Lappa Valley railway tourist attraction. So from this area, it diverts off of the disused railway line or the tourist attraction and towards East Wheel Rose Mine. So this is just to give you an idea of that Newlyn Holt interchange. So the Holt is to the west, and as we travel sort of northwards, we'll go over the existing abutments on a steel structure with a ramped access at either end. Similar to the Ring Road structure, there's ramps either side to provide that headroom to the carriageway below, which needs to be a minimum of 5.7 metres. And you'll see just to the well, in the bottom left image, there's another sort of ramped access. And that ramp access would serve the St Newlyn East to Cullen Cross Trail, because at this area, both trails would utilise the same section. So this application sort of caters for the Newlyn, Newquay to Perranporth route and the St Newlyn East to Cullen Cross point, and providing access up onto a shared section of trail. And then just moving on from the interchange, we go through East Wheel Rose and Lappa Valley. It's a mixture of unbound and bound surfacing in this area, but 3 metre width with an adjacent 3 metre width for equestrian use. Public right-of-way connections in this area are retained as in the other sections. To the north of this image, just to give members some idea, hopefully you can see my cursor on the screen, but in that area indicated just to the immediate, the top of the plan, to the north, there is an intention to provide some grassland habitat. So part of that biodiversity net gain, and to compensate for the losses, there is an area to include improved grassland in that area. From that section, we move towards Methyl Wood. And again, it's a mixture of bound and unbound surfacing. There will be breaks in Cornish hedgerows through the fields. Methyl Woods is a Cornwall County wildlife site and an ancient woodland in part, but the proposal does not include any of the ancient woodland area. There is an indication or included within the proposed plans to include an area of woodland planting around half a hectare adjacent to the former railway line in Methyl Wood. So that's just in the area to the top left or top west of the plan. Hopefully you can see my cursor on the screen there, just giving you an indication of that area. There's a structure known as the Methyl Sky Ramp, which will bring users of the trail from the countryside section that we've just been through and back onto the railway line. This section of the railway line is alongside Lappa Valley tourist attraction, so it will be used by cyclists and pedestrians. Equestrian users have a separate access to use the highway in that area. That's for safety reasons, to prevent horses being startled by the trains being so close to them. So I'll show you in the next slide an image of the Methyl Sky Ramp. So this is the Methyl Sky Ramp, which brings us off from the countryside section down onto the Lappa Valley section adjacent to the existing area that the trains use. So it's a 3.5 metre wide structure, steel structure, piled foundations to reduce impacts upon existing trees. As you can see, it goes through the archway of Methyl Bridge. And from there, it continues alongside the Lappa Valley Railway, all the way up to their car park, which I'm sure members will be familiar with. And it goes around the edge of the car park on a bound surface, where it will terminate. So the section between Benny Mill, as I mentioned at the start, and Trewery will be subject to a forthcoming application, which will be submitted in due course. So from Trewery, the route links with the National Cycle Network route number 32, which runs east to west. You can see the trail just starts again to the north of Trewery. It's a bound and unbound surface, 3 metres wide with an additional 3 metre wide equestrian facility. In this area, there's also the intention to do some woodland planting, again part of the enhancement and biodiversity net gain measures that are proposed. So that would be to the immediate west of the proposed section of the trail that you see there, and just to the area that's sort of behind the photograph. There's another section of proposed woodland and grassland improvement just behind that photo. The photo there just gives you an indication of the existing circumstances within the field that the trail would go through. Before at the bottom, it joins the disused railway again. And from this section, it's an unbound path that travels northwards from Trewery towards Gwills. Three metre wide, and in terms of the enhancement proposals, you're looking at coppicing and additional interplanting amongst the existing tree species. As we head towards Gwills, it goes under the existing road bridge, and then due to development on the former railway line, Riverside Holiday Park for example, the trail would divert just to the north of the former railway cutting, so again through countryside to the bottom of existing fields. There would be the removal of some Japanese knotweed. The trail itself, once it comes off of the former railway, would be a 3 metre wide trail with an additional 3 metre wide equestrian facility. As we head out of Gwills towards Newquay, again, it just follows just off of the railway line, or the former railway line. It's an unbound track, stop-proof gates, and dog-proof mesh post and wire fencing to either sides to prevent access being provided to that farmland. And there would be some proposed head breaks. And just this final section showing you the connection to Newquay. So again, just alongside the former railway line, an unbound surface that joins with the A392. There will be some additional species-rich hedgerow planting in this area. And to cross the A392, there would be a toucan crossing that is being delivered as part of the residential development that's been permitted in that area. My understanding is that the toucan crossing is booked in to be delivered in January, or construction start in January next year. And from the toucan crossing, it will connect to an existing trail, which will be widened to 3 metres, which provides the links into the back of Newquay, just to the rear of the Morrison's supermarket. From there, there's an onward connection onto Treloggan Road, which is part of the National Cycle Network Route 32. And that National Cycle Network route also joins onto Treloggan Lane and into Trenance Leisure Park, where there is car parking available, and attractions such as Newquay Zoo and Waterworld. So just to sum up the presentation, in terms of the balance of considerations, obviously the significant benefit is the delivery of a safe multi-user route connecting Perranporth to Newquay, and that offers significant public benefits. The route minimises disturbance to flora and fauna, retaining tree cover to the railway cutting edge. It will result in the loss of a number of trees, but these are predominantly self-seeding species that have colonised the former railway track bed over the last 60 years plus since it has been used, and some short-term negative impacts upon habitats and fauna would be brought. However, it's concluded that the mitigation and compensation measures proposed and the enhancement through biodiversity net gain will result in longer term benefits to the natural environment. Sections of the trail do not use the former railway track and cutting, and would be through the countryside, which inevitably leads to a change in the immediate character. Those impacts are very localised. It is considered that the significant public benefits outweigh the more limited harm that's identified in the report before you. And once taken into account the well-considered design and mitigation proposed and secured by planning conditions, the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions, and with that slightly amended recommendation for delegated authority to be granted to the Service Director, having regard to that request to the Secretary of State for a screening direction. Thank you, Chairman. I'll hand back to you.
Chairman, Sarah Goodall here, clerk for the meeting. We have an issue with one of our public speakers, and Mr. Hulett. Mr. Hulett, if you are listening to the live stream, Mr. Hulett, could you please hang up your telephone, and we'll redial you, we'll call you and give you the correct number to join the meeting. So Mr. John Hewitt, if you are listening to the live stream, if you could please hang up your telephone, and we will call you and give you the correct number for the meeting. Chairman, we have our first objector, Mr. Rideout in the lobby. If you want to call them in first, whilst in the hope that we can get hold of Mr. Hewitt in the meantime.
Yes, I am. Yes, if we can have Mr. Rideout Jameson invited to speak now.
Andrew Saunders, meeting producer here. I've had to unmute all of the public speakers due to background noise. So Mr. Rideout Jameson, if you can hear me, can you press *6 on your telephone and that will unmute you? Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning. You'll have, and welcome to the meeting. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and you'll be reminded when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay, shall I start?
As soon as you start to speak, time starts. So yeah, go on. There's some feedback.
Yes, Mr. Rideout Jameson, have you got the webcast on in the background?
No, that's muted.
That's muted. I think we're just maybe getting feedback through the telephone, Chairman. Maybe if Mr. Rideout Jameson starts to speak, and hopefully we can clearly hear him.
Hello, is that any better?
That's better, yes.
Okay. Well, I'll start now. Dear Mr. Chairman and committee members, I am grateful to have the opportunity to address you today at the Strategic Planning Committee. My address will last 130 seconds. My wife and I are neighbours of the proposed route. We live at Trewery Mill. We are prepared to support the application subject to a condition being placed. We are deeply concerned at the proposed route through the council freehold land to our immediate north. However, the proposed cutting does not make any sense in the context of the submitted planning application. I anticipate that you will be considering the case purely on the merits of the application process. Subsequent paragraph numbers pertain to the planning document provided by Case Officer Matt Doble. The proposed cutting is intrusive, expensive and destructive, paragraph 58. It is also unnecessary, as we have proposed an alternative route using the old track bed, a section of which that we own, including a viaduct river crossing. Choosing this alternative route would allow users to access the trail within the CSI design criteria, paragraph 69. I asked the committee to add the following condition to a positive decision. The condition would mandate the alternative route that I have suggested. This alternative route was submitted to Cornwall Council Planning through our solicitors. This condition is also supported by Newland East Parish Council, paragraph 31. Please now view your email for a graphic of the alternative route. Thank you for your time. End of address.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions of the speaker from the committee members? Councillor John Dyer, you put your hand up. Wish to ask a question? You wish to ask a question? Did Councillor Dyer put his hand up then?
It's Angela, meeting producer. No, I can't see anything, Chairman.
It's gone up again now. He's got his hand up. Councillor Dyer, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Ask a question. We can hear you. Can you want to ask a question of the speaker?
Yes, I have considerable sympathy with the speaker. Can the speaker tell me why the council officers have avoided the railway cutting but are working very close to it? Why don't they stay on it, sir, in your opinion?
In my opinion, there have been developments in the area that were contrary to a Carrick Council local policy.
Yeah.
There was an extension granted by Carrick Council contrary to a policy that was in force at the time. This constrains the ability of Cornwall Council Planning, or the planners of Cornwall Council, not the Cornwall Council Planning side of things, but the Cormac side of things, to constrains the route. However, I believe the council is in negotiations with other parties, and the resolution may be met, but I'm not party to any of that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions of the speaker? Okay, we'll move on to the next speaker then. Thank you for that, Mr. Judd. And we'll go on to the next speaker. Thank you, Mr. Ryder Jameson. Next speaker is Mr. John Hulett.
Hello.
Welcome, Mr. Hulett. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and be reminded when there's 30 seconds remaining. And your time will start when you start presenting your case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, Mr. Doble has enlightened you at last about the Secretary of State and the appeal in progress. Yesterday, before I was informed that I could address the committee, I emailed all members of the committee stating a material consideration of this proposal which members didn't appear at the time to be aware of, namely the appeal to the Secretary of State to give a screening directive on an EIA for the proposal. And that's currently in progress, as Mr. Doble has stated. The Chairman and Councillor Brown graciously acknowledged receipt of the email. The reason this appeal has been lodged concerns the process by which the screening opinion, not EIA development, therefore no EIA required, was arrived at. The reasoning is available to anyone wishing to know by contacting John Hulett. So where he holds? It is more than 3 minutes long. Let me restate the aims of an environmental impact assessment. It is to protect the environment by ensuring that a local planning authority, when deciding whether to grant planning permission for a project, which is likely to have significant effects on the environment, does so in the full knowledge of the likely significant effects and takes this into account in the decision-making process. Being designated not EIA development removes another stated aim of an environmental impact assessment, which is to ensure that the public are given early and effective opportunities to participate in the decision-making process. I'm not an objector. Our property is legitimately on the disused railway track, and we are to have part of our house demolished, which your previous caller alluded to. Anything of current use to us will be rendered inaccessible. Please try to avoid conflating these facts with my desire for the Council to progress this proposal in a more inclusive, dignified and professional manner. The arrogance all landowners have experienced from Council officers is not conducive to progress. This is brought into sharp relief when the representations of the harms in point 58 are considered. Many of these harms can be addressed by an EIA and should have been at an early stage, as suggested by the tree officer and the county ecologist in August 2019. The benefits would seem to reflect the answers you would receive if you asked the question, who would like a free house or who would like a free car? Expressing such a desire with no obligation to fund it is a pretty fatuous exercise.
30 seconds.
The county ecologist stated in the pre-application advice in August 2019, we also assume that due to the scale of the project, an environmental impact assessment will be needed and that ecology will be a chapter within the environmental statement with the ecological impact assessment as a technical annex. This is not what you've been presented with. Thank you. End of presentation.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Mr. Hulett? All right, Councillor Dyer, you wish to ask a question?
The question follows on from that statement. Who is going to address the gentleman's concerns? You can't really go on to the next item on the agenda and we don't hear any answers to that. They are quite significant questions.
Councillor Dyer, that will be a question you can ask of the officers in a minute. This is a question to the Speaker at the moment. Are there any questions? Any more questions of Mr. Hulett?
Hello.
None. Thank you, Mr. Hulett. We'll now move on to the next speakers.
Sorry, Chairman. I did see Jesse Foot had his hand raised. I'm not sure it's gone down again now.
I did raise my hand there. I'm just wondering, Mr. Hulett, you mentioned encountering some arrogance from council officers. I'm just wondering if you had any specific personal examples of that.
Oh, well, we've been threatened with compulsory purchase 4 times. Trevilly, which are having their farm severed in half, and have just received a derisory offer for their land, it'll destroy the farm at Trevilly. It'll destroy the farm shop, which is an asset on the edge of Newquay. It's a thriving farm with a local business, and what you're going to do is you're going to go through 7 fields of their property instead of 2. You're going to divide the property in half completely. There are alternatives, but the arrogance of officers just will not allow discussion of it. The arrogance, we personally, they've been threatened with compulsory purchase from the beginning. We've been threatened with compulsory purchase 4 times now, and it drags your life down into the gutter. We're currently in the process of negotiating with the council. Our neighbour who you spoke to earlier, Mr. Ridout Jameson, he's quite right. There was a Carrick district restriction on this, but it was never carried on.
Yeah.
Into the present day.
Yeah.
So we have legitimately built.
Councillor Dyer, please turn your mic off.
We have got a legitimate property on the railway line which is going to be demolished, and we're in negotiations with the. So we're going to have our lives and our property completely destroyed for this 3-metre path. So that's the state of it at the moment. Okay, and the arrogance, it comes from officers just totally abusing their power. They've got the power to put this through, and it will go through. There's no doubt about it, because of the collusion that goes on.
Okay.
It's very sad.
You've answered the question. We can ask officers later.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
On their view. Is that you? Sue Nicholas, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, please, Chairman. Thank you for identifying those issues. Could I ask, how much consultation do you feel has actually and really taken place between people who are affected by this and the officers and the council in general?
Oh, there's lots of failed opportunities to talk to people, appointments made and never fulfilled. There's lots of that, and then there's lots of not taking any notice of anything they say. I mean, Trevilly is Barrett's at Trevilly, which is the Newquay end, which is just an accident waiting to happen, with unaccompanied 12-year-olds arriving at the A392. Unaccompanied 12-year-olds arriving at one of the busiest roads around Newquay, with just a barrier to stop them driving straight into the road.
Okay,
I mean,
one more, and so the old railway line that is no longer used, if that was used, would that give you the same access to the areas that the route that is proposed will have?
Well, it is the old railway line. Our property used to be the lodge keeper's house, the cottage for the level crossing at Trewerry. A previous occupant has built an annex legally on the track bed.
Okay, thank you.
So our property is completely on the track bed, because that's the only level land in the area. So everything we own is on the track bed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's
thank you.
Councillor Dyer, wish to ask another? Oh, do you wish to ask another question? Your hand is up. You're on mute, Councillor Dyer.
I will undoubtedly want to ask several questions. There is much concern and much in principle to welcome from this development, but they must take into account, which they have not done so, the resolution that was passed that, as far as I'm concerned, is still alive on the table from Carrick District Council. But that will follow.
These are questions to the speaker at the moment, not for you making statements. Councillor Parsons. Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Mr. Hulett. Mr. Hulett, could you just give a little more detail, please, regarding the property which you've mentioned is on the old railway line of yours that's apparently going to be partly demolished? Is this your permanent residence, or could you just give some details surrounding this building, please?
Yes, it was built as a granny annex with the previous occupant. He built it on the there was an existing garage there and storeroom, and he added a granny annex living room to make it a granny annex for an aging relative. That's how it came to be built, and that's how the permission was given by Carrick when Carrick was in charge. So it's all legal, but there's no illegality about it. But it is right on the railway line. Obviously, the lodge, the cottage for the level crossing was built right next to the railway line. And so if you built on the railway line, you've totally blocked any access for anything else. But that's the way it is. It's there and it's there legally. Okay, but the only trouble is the rest of the railway line, because it's been owned for years, ever since it's been privately owned, has got everything basically of value that we own is on the railway line, because that's the only flat area we've got next to the Gannel. So that's how it's come to be there.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's answered the question.
If possible, Chair, could I just follow that up? Just to clarify, nobody lives in that property currently?
Yes, we live in it. It's as part of our house. We bought it with that there.
Okay. Councillor Monk.
Hello, Mr. Hulett. Hope you're okay.
Hello. Yes, thank you.
Just wondering, you said you're in current negotiations with the council regarding a solution to the issues of your property and your land. Just a couple of questions. One, how well do you think they are going at the moment, and are Cornwall Council officers and negotiators trying to expedite this in a timely manner, or are they still dragging their feet? If you could answer that one. And secondly, I believe this actual planning application before us today, does it include your bit of land, or is your bit of land, is it a separate application to be after you've agreed anything, if you do agree anything with Cornwall Council?
Yes, it's a separate application, but that's part of my point with the environmental impact assessment. The 700 metres of undisturbed 60-year-old rewilded railway track, which isn't included in any EIA negotiations, because it's not part of this, except the track should be considered as a whole in an environmental impact assessment. Emma Burden from Cormac told me back in February that the whole track should be looked at if an environmental impact assessment is done. What's happened here is they've salami sliced this piece off, so it doesn't, it won't ever qualify for an environmental impact assessment, because it doesn't reach the criteria or thresholds for an environmental impact assessment on its own. It's 1,000 yards. It's got to be at least a hectare or more to qualify for it. So there'll be no environmental impact assessment on that section of track. And I've been through it once in 7 years, and the sheep have been through it once. And when we got the sheep out, we all had to crawl on our hands and knees to go through it. It's since been opened up a bit, but it's undisturbed county wildlife site. It's continuous from Mitchell all the way through to us. And you're going to insert human beings into the middle of it, when they don't need to be there. That's my point. And anyway, what was the other point you made, Councillor?
It was how are the negotiations going with Cornwall Council officers regarding?
Well, they never go very quickly. Everything takes a long time, but they are in theory advancing.
Okay.
But nothing very concrete at the moment.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Dyer, can you turn your camera off, please? Chris Batters, next one to speak. Councillor Batters, you got your hand up?
Yes, beg your pardon. Yes. 3 simple questions, actually. Firstly, when was your property actually built? What year approximately? How long have you personally lived in it? And what is the total length of track that your property owns or takes up?
200 metres of track. We've lived here since 2013. The annex was built in the 2000s. The original property, which has been, quite changed over the years, was built in the 1900s.
I think I've got that bit, actually. That was the original railway cottage, I believe. So I only needed those 3 answered for clarification. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I can't see any more questions of the speaker. So thank you, Mr. Hulett, for your input on this meeting, and thank you for answering the questions. The next speaker we have is Penzablo Parish Council, Councillor Ken Yeo.
Hello, Chairman. It's Angela Saunders, meeting producer. Councillor Yeo is on mute, so Councillor Yeo, if you can hear me, please press *6 on your telephone.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Ken.
Right, lovely. Thank you, Chairman.
You'll welcome to the meeting. You'll have 3 minutes to speak and be reminded when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Right, thank you for that. Well, thank you, Chairman and members, for allowing me to speak on this application. Having attended many meetings about the proposal, also being the Chairman of the St Agnes and Perranporth Community Network Panel, through which the trail is being created, I make the following observations. This planning application is unique. It is about creating several miles of a kilometres of a multi-use trail through several parishes. And I hope the committee will look at this. Unlike the normal planning application or development on one site, this is a unique application. There is a great deal of support for the project from the parish councils and the public. The benefits are many, as the officer has already reported. However, as this is a unique application, it presents a challenge to you in making your decision on the application before you. My concern and those of the parish councils are that they and the public are not being listened to, and the consultations are almost non-existent. The trail through Goonhavern, which I appreciate is not part of this application, but has already been built, has improved the highway, but the trail is a potential disaster and accident waiting to happen. The park in Goonhavern is a prime example of how not to do it. It has taken more than double of the land required, divided the park into two, and despite proposing a fence originally, it appears now that this is not being done. Para 21 of today's report, the police in their response refer to fencing. Objections. Para 58 lists these, and while some have been addressed, many have not. Para 69 refers to the trail being safe for a 12-year-old unaccompanied. You have already heard another speaker with concerns on this. Dog bins are mentioned, as are rest areas. What about waste bins? Mixed messages have been received about who will maintain and be responsible for these facilities. Is this unique planning application? These matters need consultation. A resolution for the reassurance of residents who live near the trail.
Councillor Yeo.
Thank you. And the parish councils which may put a demand on future budgets. In determining this application, please listen to your electorate that they want to make this project a great success. It is a long trail and there is a need to consult and constructively deal with the concerns. Otherwise, this will be a project that is being bulldozed through and failing to meet the early and great expectations of your...
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Yeo. Do we have any questions for Councillor Yeo? Are there any questions for Councillor Yeo? Can't see any hands up. Angela, can you hear me?
It appears Chairman, Councillor Rand has raised his hand.
I have indeed put my hand up, Chair. I have put my hand up, Chair.
Okay, yes, I can see it now.
Okay, my comment, just listening, if I may, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor Rand. Sarah,
can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, so my comment is listening to what has been said is slightly disturbing because we're getting a similar reaction from those speakers about lack of consultation and things being railroaded, sorry about the pun, through these situations. And also, I do understand that we have to have a time limit, but I think, Chair, if I may ask, we haven't got many of these comments from people. If we could just give them another minute or two to finish, I think that would be sensible and right, given that we're doing it on a virtual basis.
Okay, Councillor Rand, this is question to the speaker.
Yeah, I haven't got any, except I'd like to listen to a bit more. Thank you.
Okay, right, thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Councillor Rand, if you take your hand down, please. Councillor Foote, you wish to ask a question of Councillor Yeo?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Yeo, I'm just wondering what would be the final couple of sentences of your statement there?
My final statement was to the committee. I don't know how much you did get, but my response is, in determining this application, please listen to your electorate. They want to make this project a great success. It is a long trail, and there is a need to consult and constructively deal with concerns. Otherwise, this will be a project that is being bulldozed through and failing to meet the early and great expectations of your electorate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask how many episodes or timings of public consultations were there in this process?
I mean, initially, there were a large number, and I went to the one, it was during a holiday period, but I went to the one at Tristan. There were a great number of the public that attended, and the presentations and the consultation then was great. It is just since the proposal is going forward that questions are asked. I mean, if I can give just one brief example, there are bollards that have been put in the new scheme in Goonhavern. One was knocked over 3 weeks ago. There is still a hole in the ground which someone could trip in. No response from the development.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions to the speaker? Councillor Nicholas, can you lower your hand? Yes, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, we'll now go on to the next speakers, and that's going to be, first one is Mr. Adrian Roper.
I'm no longer muted. There we are. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll remind you when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Great.
So good morning to you.
Yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm the project director for delivering the Saints Trail. So obviously speaking about some of the benefits more widely around what the scheme will deliver. As you know, and as Matt's introduced, this is part of a wider network of trails in the county. The most significant one being the St Agnes de Truro Trail. And we estimate what we're trying to deliver is a scheme akin to the Camel Trail, which we know is hugely popular. We estimate that the usage on this Perranporth and Rookie would be in the region of 300,000 users per annum in comparison to the Camel Trail, which has around 500,000 users. And in terms of the benefits that it brings, which I want to sort of more widely touch on, I've broken them down to economic, social, environmental, and health ones. So more widely and economically, we know that cycling schemes have a very good benefit-cost ratio. And more generally speaking, Cycling England have showed that there's a benefit-cost ratio of 13 to 1 investing in cycling projects. Not saying that's going to be exact that for this project, but that shows the sort of value cycling schemes. Specific to Cornwall, we know that the Camel Trail brings in an estimated £3 million to the economy every year. And those of you who know Wadebridge will know that Wadebridge is thriving on the back of the Camel Trail. And we're sure that Perranporth and Newquay will benefit in a very similar way through this scheme as Wadebridge, Bodmin and Padstow have from the Camel Trail. Already we've received 5 inquiries around developing bike hire businesses. I know of one development of self-catering cottages that's based on the back of the proposals. So we see, real interest in positive action around enterprise development. And also there's the model that the Camel Trail has developed around getting income from enterprises benefiting from the route to support maintenance, because something we'll be able to replicate on the scheme. Socially, there's obviously a great value in the active travel benefits that Matt again touched on earlier on, getting people on to walk, cycle, use their wheelchairs, use their disabled for horse riders as well. So there's real benefits there. And no doubt there's people who currently can't access the countryside will be able to on the back of this scheme. And in terms of public health benefits, we all know the sort of benefits both physically and mentally of being able to walk, cycle, horse ride, go out in your wheelchair, whatever it might be, into the countryside. So we know for a fact there'll be enormous public health benefits on the back of the
30
scheme.
seconds remaining.
Okay. And then, in terms of the environmental benefits, it's really at the prime, as well as the biodiversity net gain. There's benefits around this active travel share being far more, so we're enabling people to make day-to-day journeys as well as leisure journeys from Newquay and Perranporth and places in between to walk, cycle, which at the moment they don't currently have. So more generally, we feel there's an enormous amount of benefit across all manner of aspects of the scheme.
Okay, thank you for that. We do have a number of questions of this officer now. So, Councillor Chris Batters, your question.
Thank you, Chair. Good day, Mr. Roper. I'm fully aware of the benefits that this trail will produce, because obviously my division takes in the Camel Trail, so I'm fully conversant with what happens there, and I'm greatly appreciative of it being a tourist attraction and a great thing for that area. But as the project director, can you give me some insight into the statements made by Mr. Hulett earlier, which does give me cause for concern? He made some valid, it would appear valid statements critical of the position he is finding himself in, and stating that he gets very little cooperation towards his problems. So can you, as the project director, give me some reasons as to why I might at the end of the day have to upset Mr. Hulett possibly? So can you answer that, please?
Well, I think it'd be, as Mr. Hulett states, things don't happen as quickly as we'd all like, and one of the things I've endeavoured to do in dealing with Mr. Hulett and his agent and other landowners for that matter is try and deal with their queries and concerns as quickly as we can. So I've been enrolled around about a year now. What I've endeavoured to do in that particular case is work as closely as we can with Mr. Hulett, and we're having quite complex discussions around how best to deal with the situation at Trewery. The reason why this planning application doesn't include that section is due to the enormous complexities and other options that have been looked at previously. And what I've committed to Mr. Hulett and his family is that I'll work positively with them and his agent to try and seek a solution that delivers the scheme, but also is fair to him and his family. I've often said that we need to be consciously aware that we represent Mr. Hulett, his family, and everyone else in Cornwall. So we need to try and treat people as reasonably as you can, and I've endeavoured to do that as much as I can, and I hope that's appreciated on the other side.
If I may just come back with a quick one, Chair. You said at the beginning that you've now been communicating with Mr. Hulett for a year now.
No, sorry, I've been in post for a year, so that's when my personal communications have been on, but there have been discussions prior to that.
I see. But are the discussions that you're holding with him likely to favour him in any way, or is he living under the continual stress of thinking he's going to have his property demolished and be kicked off the railway line? Does it hold any hope for Mr. Hulett?
Well, I hope it does. I mean, I don't want to go into the details of discussion with him, particularly because it's outside of the planning application being considered today. But we're in a position whereby we're trying to treat his family reasonably and provide something that will not make them any worse off in terms of their overall life picture. So, I think, the negotiations we have aren't necessarily for this meeting, but we are trying to get to a position whereby we are not making that particular family worse off.
Thank you, Chair. I'll leave it at that. Hopefully somebody else might have some follow-ups.
Thank you for that. Councillor John Bastin, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Roper. Can I just ask some negative questions? I mean, you've given us a lot of pluses, but can you give me an idea of how many trees and how many metres of Cornish hedge and how much agricultural land will be lost with this project?
Could I defer that to the next speaker? Alan is speaking around the tree element. In terms of specifics, I mean, I can't take you into absolute specifics on those areas, but what we have, as Matt talked about earlier, was that we've followed the hierarchy of environmental impact. So trying to, as much as we can, so we minimise it and then mitigate into the last one. But where we have had to mitigate and looking at the biodiversity net gain requirement that is now part of the planning, we've exceeded that. And I think so I believe it's 11.47% biodiversity net gain when we're required to achieve 10%. And we'll be improving a lot of the habitats along the railway line. So particularly when talking about potential dormouse habitat. We'll be creating aerial routes for them, which currently don't exist due to gaps in the canopy and such like. So we're acutely aware of the fact that, as well as just being an A to B route, people want to be enjoying this route. So having an attractive environment along the route is really, really important to people. So we've been conscious, and the designers have been conscious of that throughout the programme. And as I say, we're exceeding what we are required to achieve on biodiversity net gain. So the overall impact of the scheme will be increased area of habitat, improved habitat management along the route, increased planting, and so on. So, whilst there might be short-term impact through loss of some trees, longer term there will be a positive environmental impact as a result of the scheme.
Right, thank you. Can I just one more bit, Chair, please? I think you may have mentioned this, but who's going to maintain all this area?
Yeah, so the council highways team are maintaining it. It's not maintained it's not a highway to maintain the public expense, not in that category, but the highways team are committed to maintaining the route, and we're also looking at options to work with volunteer groups and Sustrans around some other sorts of other maintenance as well, as they do on this will no doubt become national cycle network, and Sustrans have groups of rangers and volunteers that do an awful lot of work on those as well. So there'll be, as well as the sort of standard maintenance, there'll be additional maintenance on top.
Right, thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bassard, could you take your hand down there, please, if you aren't going to ask another question? Sue Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, one thing that I noticed you talked about wheelchair users for this route. And I'm just wondering how you're going to address that for wheelchair users, people with disabilities, when you're having unmade sections of it. And also, if there are no facilities on this route, how is that going to be facilitated and help needed maybe for people who've got disabilities?
Yeah, so in terms of the standard, whilst it's called an unbound surface, it is a stone to dust finish, so it'll be very similar to the section, much of the elements of use on the camel trail. And from a user perspective, whilst a bound tarmac finish would be preferable, if there are compromises we've made here. So in terms of wheelchair users, the path would be useful for them, and we're obviously trying to reduce barriers along the way and gradients and so on to make sure that people can get on the path. I know from previous experience of building routes that it's an absolute life changer for people that we might not necessarily picked up through consultation at the moment. And I recall that from a previous scheme whereby the first letter I got was from someone whose life had been transformed on the back of a route similar to the Saints Trails being developed. So that's something they will be able to use. In terms of things like toilet facilities, it will be a case of we're not putting any additional toilet facilities in, but it will be a case of use of ones on the route at the moment. So there are some at Goonhaven, Newquay End and Perranporth End obviously as well. So yeah, it might be a case when we look at our signing strategy in detail that we can signpost to them. So we do need to do a bit more work on that signing bit, but we're not putting additional facilities in there for toilets, for example.
Right. So then there may not be the opportunity then that you envisage for people with disabilities.
There will be. There'll definitely be the opportunity for people to have increased access to the countryside. And of course, it'd be great if we could provide all manner of facilities along the route to cater for everybody's need. But we're definitely increasing the range of people that will be able to access the countryside through the scheme. Yeah, it'd be wonderful if we could, put in toilets and other facilities throughout the route, and we'll provide resting stops where we can, and informal seating spaces. So, people that might get tired by exercising can rest as often as they can. So we're kind of acutely aware of that. We'll work with Sustrans again to look at some of the options around those resting spots. So, it's a combination of as many of those elements as we can fit into the scheme. But,
okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jesse Foot.
Thank you, Chair. You've said much about the biodiversity net gains and mitigation as part of this application. Personally, my view is that the DEFRA biodiversity net gain metric just doesn't go far enough. Paragraph 81 states that we're going to lose 1,281 trees as part of this application, which is a lot of trees. And I understand the use of mitigation to address that type of situation, but trees take a long time to grow. So I'm interested in your view and want to understand, do you think it's unique? I mean, this application's been mentioned as being a unique application, that an application that seeks to build a trail over 15 kilometers long, almost 10 miles long, doesn't have an environmental impact assessment applied to it. So I'm just interested, do you think that's a unique situation, that hasn't happened?
I don't know if it's a unique situation at all, but obviously Cormac, who are our agent in doing the designs and the applications, may put their point over to the planning department, and the planning department use the regulations to make that assessment. And clearly, the ecological impacts were the major one along the route, and our view is that the other environmental impacts were relatively minor. But obviously that's for the Secretary of State now to come to a conclusion on. So they're far better placed than I to discuss that. Alan's going to talk about the tree and shrub loss in a moment, so I won't steal his thunder, and he'll be better informed than I in any case. But I think it's important to realise what type some of these trees are and the condition they're in, and the value that they have in terms of landscape value, but also habitat value. And whilst there will be that loss, there will be better placed trees, there'll be more appropriate types of trees, there will be better management of trees along the route. So whilst it might first seem to be a significant figure, there's a lot of work on in terms of mitigating that and providing better quality trees, more appropriate trees, and in more appropriate places, and for example coppicing along the route, which will improve habitats and management of those trees. So yeah, slightly sidestepping the EIA question, but I think it's much better addressed by the Secretary of State at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. I can't see any more questions of this speaker, Mr. Roper, so we should go on to questions. Mr. Alan Rowe now. What would be questions from Mr. Alan Rowe? Can you, you'll have 3 minutes to speak on this one, and you'll be reminded when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Hear me, Chair?
I can hear you.
Thank you. My name's Alan Rowe. I'm the project arboriculturalist working for this. I'm based in the planning department, but I'm working with Cormac on this scheme. Good morning, Chair, councillors, officers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We've already heard about some of the benefits of the scheme, and I'd like to reinforce those comments a little bit before I carry on. The scheme has many positive factors, including a potentially significant reduction in carbon emissions, improvement of mental and physical health for the users of the trail, the creation of woodland, orchards, individual trees, and it will also reduce traffic on the roads. We want to create community woodlands to reconnect people with the natural environment. In addition, it's going to put £17 million directly into the Cornish economy, which considering the state of the economy at the moment and where we are in the world, that's very welcome. The trees along the proposed route have always been the primary consideration when developing this scheme. The design team have listened to both Steve Evans from Cormac and myself as project arboriculturists, and we were brought in to give the best outcome for trees along the route because the project team realised there were issues. They've amended the route wherever we've asked, and they've embraced our suggestions, and the joint approach for trees has been all throughout the scheme to retain, protect and enhance. So retain wherever possible, protect retained trees and enhance both the landscape and biodiversity along the route. This has resulted in a scheme that has many new trees along the entire route, and this fact seems to have been overlooked a little bit. The trail is 15.5 kilometres long, and it represents an opportunity for Cornwall Council to increase the canopy cover of this part of the county to the benefit of everyone. There will be a net gain in tree numbers post-development, and we are seeking to get a 10% biodiversity net gain overall. Now, when considering tree planting projects on this kind of scale, we have to understand that we are securing trees for future generations. It's very easy to have an immediate negative response to tree losses, but we should avoid that and fully consider the long-term improvements that are going to be gained. And when dealing with trees, we need to see the bigger picture and understand the long-term gains. A scheme of this scale cannot be realised without accepting the loss of some trees, but this cannot be looked at in isolation, and any decision must weigh those losses against the thousands of new trees that will be provided and the benefits that they and the trail will provide for Cornwall and its people long into the future. Many of the proposed trees for removal are scrubby, small-scale trees, and of the proposed 1,281 tree removals, if you take out the willow,
30 seconds remaining,
the holly and the thorn trees, that's 87% of the total trees removed. So those small scrubby trees are going to make up 87% of those tree losses, and we can get much better trees back in the ground. During implementation, the project arbs and ecologists will oversee all the works next to trees. The scheme as a whole has allowed some amazing opportunities to create lasting, sustainable features, such as a bridge based on the Sky Bridge at Westonbirt, where users will be able to cycle directly through the canopies of large, mature trees. The scheme has a chance for us to create something amazing that will benefit for generations to come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I have some questions now with the Mr. Rowe, and that's Councillor Cornelius Olivier. You want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I think the comments made just now about benefit to the economy are worth keeping in mind, as some assessments show that Newquay is the town in the country that will be worst affected by the decline in hospitality due to the pandemic. I think it's been flagged up in some BBC news reports as the worst affected town in the country. The questions I've got are to do with the reduction in carbon emissions. So I think we heard earlier the mention of 300,000 people using the trail a year, but if it's a recreational facility, how many is there an estimate for how many fewer car journeys will take place because of the introduction of the trail? Because I don't think all those 300,000 are going to be substitute car journeys. And the other question I've got very specifically about Newland Downs, and I may have missed something earlier about mitigation needed to be in place to protect the Newland Downs site of special scientific interests in terms of mitigation to guard against damage caused by recreational use and dog walkers. So if you could just answer those two questions about substitute, car journeys, how many are actually going to be reduced by the opening of the trail, and the point about Newland site of special scientific interest.
I'm specifically the project arboriculturist, so I don't have that information, Councillor. You'd have to ask either Matt Doble or Adrian, who would have access to that information.
Yeah. I should point out that you were the person who mentioned a reduction in emissions due to lower car journeys.
Yeah,
so it's even reasonable to ask you.
No, and in essence, as a general overview, then yes, of course, this scheme will get cars off the road, but what those actual figures are, I don't know. I don't have the details of that.
Right, and
the money is a really important factor, though, as you've highlighted. I mean, we're talking about putting £17 million directly into the Cornish economy, and hopefully this scheme can do for Perranporth and Newquay what the Camel Trail has done for Weybridge, which has really been revitalised by the Camel Trail.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Again, that doesn't really come within arboriculture. But the Newlyn site of special scientific interest, are you able to answer that question?
Only in general terms that whenever we're impacting on any kind of environment, then our policy throughout has been protect, retain, and enhance. So if we do lose any sections of it, it will be enhanced, and we will be seeking to get a net gain overall.
Right, thank you.
But I don't have the details with Councillor.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor John Bastin.
Oops. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, can you lower your hand, please?
Sure.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Rowe, what would you estimate the carbon sequestration value of the existing trees are, and how long will it take to reach that figure with future planting?
I mean, we haven't done those kind of figures, but generally it takes a tree up until its age 17 years to start storing any meaningful carbon. Any trees that we fell, usually when you fell trees, that carbon is re-released into the atmosphere through burning or some similar activity. On this site, we will be stacking all logs and brash we cut on site so that the carbon is retained. And in addition, those log piles and brash piles will be very important ecological features. So that can feed into creating new kind of sustainable, fully functioning ecosystems. So
Sure.
we're going to reduce the carbon loss in those terms, and the new trees will take some time to gain carbon. But as I said, when you're planting trees, we're not planting for ourselves, we're planting for future generations, in the same way that many of the trees that we enjoy now as residents in Cornwall were planted by those who went before us. So, you know, carbon capture and tree management is a long-term scheme, a long-term plan.
Well, I thank you for that, but I would underline that currently those trees and that shrubbery, the scrub, the holly even, which is evergreen, is currently removing a lot of CO2, and we're going to remove those. I have to wait 17, 20 plus 30 years before that activity is replaced. So that's my concern.
Well, unfortunately, that's the same with all of this climate emergency and the forests for Cornwall and everything, and sequestering carbon. There is, of course, going to be a time lag. You know, that's just the fact of the matter, I'm afraid.
All right, and sorry, Chair, just one more point. You're saying that your dead or the trees you've cut down won't be releasing carbon. They certainly will be with fungal activity and insect activity. So, you can't really say that they're just going to sit there as piles of carbon.
No, they will release it slowly, more slowly.
Right. Anyway, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councillor Sue Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair, and morning, Alan.
Morning.
I was originally really quite startled at removing 1,280 odd trees, but having worked with you on plantation areas in my area, I know that you are absolutely keen on preserving whatever you can. Just how many, roughly, would you say of these trees would probably be dying, or older trees that need cutting down, especially the larger ones? Because obviously, you know, some of them will overgrow one another and some will take others out. So I just wondered, you know, how is that all going to be mitigated?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I mean, a lot of the trees that are proposed for felling, there's 721 willows. There's a lot of hazel, hawthorn, blackthorn, and holly, and those trees, they kind of readily coppice anyway. So, you know, cutting down willows is a recognised management technique anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't really have any kind of issues with those. There are going to be some tree losses, some individual tree losses. I accept that. I think we have to accept that. But I think it's important that we look at the scheme in the round and look at the planting opportunities. I mean, my vision would be to create new community areas of woodland, planted hopefully by the community, with the community's involvement. I would like to get community groups involved in the ongoing management of those areas. I'd like to create little habitats, you know, resting areas, little tree resting areas. We're going across lots of farmers' fields. There's going to be lots of little corners of fields where we can plant, you know, little copses of Cornish variety apple trees where people can go along the trail and pick the apples and enjoy the blossom. I would be keen to get new pollinating trees in, so trees with good blossom, so that the pollinator action plan's being fulfilled. And I think over the entire 15-kilometre stretch, yes, of course, there are going to be tree losses, and we have to accept that. But we have to look at how we can improve things going forward. And my kind of raison d'etre this whole thing is the Enhance project. How are we going to enhance this? How are we going to leave a legacy for future generations of Cornish residents? So that's where I'd come at it from.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So, Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Chair. I've just to pick up on what Cornelius was saying. The bigger part of the cycle route is to also, and the plan of it is to also link up with other cycle routes that will go on to Truro and down to St Agnes and create a much bigger cycle network, which of course helps meet our criteria as we move to a sort of low carbon transition and encourage people to actually get out of the cars and get onto cycle path as well. So it's not all going to be tourism and leisure. It's actually part of a network that will encourage people to shift away from fossil using vehicles. How many trees are you? This is a question to Mr. Rowe. How many trees are you actually going to replace? You're chopping down or getting rid of 1,200 trees. How many are you going to replace? My understanding with the trees, a lot of them have grown into the old track bed, actual train line, and therefore the roots haven't really penetrated, and that's encouraged a lot of the willow trees that you speak about. So what I was wondering, how many trees are you chopping down that actually have a trunk circumference greater than or trunk diameter, of greater than 10 inches? Is there any more really mature trees there, or most of them newish trees that were there when the rail track was decommissioned?
Yeah, like I say, 87% of it is hazel and hawthorn and willow, so trees that would never reach those kind of big individual proportions. I mean, to give some perspective, we're going to lose 1.36 hectares of woodland, but there's a further 4.2 hectares which we can retain and enhance, so we can undertake new planting, create glades, sitting areas, improve wildlife biodiversity, and we're going to create at least 2.25 hectares of brand new native broadleaf woodland, and 1 hectare of woodland edge where we can get the shrubby stuff in, and the pollinated plants and the butterfly plants. And so there's not a lot of large individual trees going to be lost. It is the bulk of it is this shrubby stuff that's growing up along the side of the railway, and we're going to be cutting that back, but enhancing and improving as well.
So if I could just come back, so overall in time there will be a net increase of planted area than the loss in the actual clearing for the track. Yeah,
we are aiming to get at least a 10% biodiversity net gain, and for me personally, that is a minimum figure. That's not the maximum we should be aiming for. We should be achieving at least that. So that will be my kind of pressure on the project.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks for that. Now I have Jesse Foote. Councillor Foote.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. So I'm just wondering if you can tell me what the other 20% of the trees are, please.
If you look at the Matt's report in paragraph 81, there's actually a table now. I'm just trying to get it myself. There's a table of
page 34.
So I'm just scrolling. So if you look in there, Councillor, there's actually a list of what trees will be lost. Hello, can you still hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can still hear you, Mr. Rose. Sarah.
Sorry, hear you.
It all went quiet. Everyone must be reading.
Does page 34 answer your question, Councillor Foote?
It does to a degree, Chair. I feel like we had a briefing on this last year, and there was a long stretch of mature oak, and I'm looking at the numbers there.
Councillor, that's along Teagle Straits, which is the St Agnes part. It's not part of this.
Oh, I see. Okay. Fine. So, okay, that's fine. If I could just have a quick follow-up question with you then. So you mentioned the hectares that are going to be lost.
Yeah.
It just seems like those are That's quite a large area to be lost and to not have a proper EIA on that. What are your thoughts?
Yep. Like I say, well, let's wait to see what the Secretary of State says.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
I don't want to kind of preempt that, really.
Okay, that's all the questions. Are there any more questions of the applicant? No. Then we have the electoral division member, Councillor John Fitter. Would you like to come in, please? Do we have Councillor Fitter here?
Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services. I'm just checking the participant list, Chairman. 1 second. Chairman, it doesn't look as if Councillor Fitter has joined us today.
No, I couldn't see him there, so. Okay, but there are a number of electoral division members. I think he's the only one who could speak on this one. So now we open up for questions of officers. Who would like to speak on this one? Councillor Dyer, you got your hand up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I put my hand up to say there are more than just John Fitter as the local member across this network. And of course it goes all the way to Perranporth. And at Perranporth, I would like to suggest it didn't stop at Perranporth Station, which is about half a mile out of Perranporth.
This is a question of officers. Councillor Dyer, this is questions of officers. Do you have a question for the officers?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that was just it. I would suggest to the officers that they take this trail through to the station that was known as Perranporth Beach Halt, which was right in the middle of Perranporth, opposite the boating lake itself, rather than stopping at Perranporth Station, which is about half a mile out of Perranporth and would require be harder for the general public to reach. It would be better off at Perranporth Beach Hall.
Okay. Can we get an answer to that that question? Why can't the route start right in Perranporth?
I think, Mark, if I could come in here, is Matt Stevenson. Obviously, the application we have to deal with is before us. As a planning authority, we would welcome any further applications for further connections. But obviously we have to deal with the applications that is before us at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dyer, do you wish to come back on that one? Okay, no. Okay, next speaker is Adrian Parsons. Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. Question to the officer. Could I sorry, apologies for the phone ringing. Could I have some more detail with regards to hearing this scheme is potentially splitting a farm in half, and your views on this, and if other options were explored? As a farmer myself, I'm fully sympathetic to the issues to which public access have to these working environments. And also a second question, if possible, please. What were the views of the planning officer with regards to the comments made by the first objector, Mr. Rideout Jameson, with regards to exploring an alternative route, if it was possible for any of these concessions to have been made to have perhaps improved the situation with them? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, hi, Councillor Parsons, Councillor Cashmere, it's Matt Doble, Plan Officer speaking. In relation to the first question, so the farm access or the farm itself, that's High Trevili, I assume is what your main questions around. I did contact the applicant regarding the representation from the owners of High Trevili. about alternative routes. And the applicant advises me that an alternative route was suggested down towards the Gannel, but the owners of High Trebilly preferred the route that is part of this planning application, so that is the route that was proceeded with. In terms of access, the proposed plan does detail farm gates on either side of the track to allow access from one side to the other, and negotiations are still continuing with landowners at High Trebilly and everybody else with land either side in terms of access arrangements. There is a recommended condition in terms of boundary treatments, so we would secure details of both boundary treatments and any access points at that point. So hopefully that answers that point. In terms of the comment from the first speaker against the scheme, in terms of using the cutting north of Trewerry, that point either side there are quite steep slopes, and it's within the highway. So from a highway safety point of view, at this time, that isn't really considered a suitable alternative. However, as we've discussed and has been raised, the section between Benny Mill and Trewerry will be subject to a separate planning application that will be submitted. Now, depending on the alignment of that section, it may be that the cutting or the former railway line to the north of Trewerry could be used, but it is subject to those negotiations in that area in terms of the alignment, but potentially in due time that could occur.
Thank you. I think that pretty much covers it, because from my point, I couldn't really work out how a railway track running through a farm was actually encroaching into open farmland. So I would hope with dialogue, it should really be able to be mitigated.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Dyer, can you turn off your camera, please? Next speaker, John Baston.
Thank you, Chair. Matt, on paragraph 35 of your report, sorry, I've looked through the conditions, but was that conditioned, that issue with the Environment Agency?
Yeah, hi, Councillor Baston. Yes, if you look at the update, the update sheet.
Sorry, I'm looking in the wrong place.
No, that's right. It's condition. I think it's condition 22. Condition 22, which is to do with the future and ongoing management and maintenance of the bund and sort of the flood infrastructure in the Perranporth area.
Right. Thanks very much for that. Sorry.
Okay. Is that it on that one?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. It just went deadly quiet for a minute. Something happened on my side. Councillor Malcolm Brown.
Yes. Thank you. I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Curnow, who is our legal advisor today. I'm obviously not expecting him to give us planning advice. That's coming from the planning officers, but I'm wondering if he would like to take the opportunity to give us any advice as to, if you like, the issues which are bordering on planning considerations, which are being raised by some of the objectors and some of the questioning, like the way in which Cornwall Council officers have or not engaged properly with landowners. I was just wondering if he would like to give us a steer as to what we ought to take into account, and also perhaps whether we deal with this application any differently because Cornwall Council is the applicant than if say it was a large private estate proposing something similar. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Brown. Yeah, I was going to come in shortly anyway, Chairman, just to remind members, and I think we've got there, Councillor Brown, that the compulsory purchase issues that have been raised, and they're quite commercially sensitive matters that aren't really part of this planning consideration, and I think members have picked up on that. I nearly came in at the beginning of the meeting. Some of the questioning probably was you know, we do need to be careful, don't we? But I was satisfied perhaps that, you know, it did get, on the other hand, some issues came out. I think, yeah, members need to be aware that the CPO process is separate. Any allegations of conduct are a separate matter, aren't they, technically? I think those allegations of conduct possibly linked back to this CPO and the land issue, which is also going to be quite contentious. So I think we're right to steer away from that. So if that helps with that issue. We've also got the issue, haven't we, of the EIA and the referral, the call-in with the Secretary of State. So obviously the Secretary of State will have the final say. That doesn't stop us looking at this application and dealing with it. We've had similar applications before. It would obviously be a subject to, you know, the findings of the Secretary of State, so we can deal with that. Was there any other question, Councillor Brown? I think that was it, wasn't it? Essentially.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with the range of issues that have been covered in that reply.
Yes, apologies.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I have been listening. I am always here and listening. Sometimes if I come in, it doesn't actually help things. So I have let the debate carry on. And as I say, I think we've got back on track, haven't we? But in a way, it's helpful for members to understand, you know, that there's lots of other issues going on. But and Mr. Doble will advise as well. They're not within his remit and within the remit of the LPA today. All right, so it's obviously there's lots of conversations going on behind the scenes about land, you know, really commercially sensitive issues. It's going to be controversial. Obviously, we have some sympathy with the speakers as well, but yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction and focusing on the planning matters. Also, as Mr. Stevenson has said, we're limited, aren't we, in terms of, you know, we're discussing the application today rather than what it could be, as Councillor Dyer's alluded to.
Right. Thank you for your advice on that, Ben. Next speaker is Councillor Sue Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ben, because one of my questions was similar to Malcolm's, really, is that, you know, if this was a private developer, would we have insisted on an environmental impact assessment being done prior to it being considered? So I think that's quite an important question, really.
I think, sorry if I come back in, I didn't really cover that bit. So obviously the fact that Cornwall Council is the applicant shouldn't make any difference. If anything, we've got to be extra careful, haven't we? And we do have checks and balances in place, and increasingly, and Matt and I know well, increasingly the council is the developer, so we have potential conflicts. We have to be very, very careful. Yeah. In legal services, for instance, we've got quite a few 106 agreements at the moment where we've got the council bringing development forward, as sometimes as Treveth, for instance, and you know, I'll be advising perhaps the LPA, and a colleague will be advising the council as the applicant. So we do have to be really careful, but it shouldn't really make any difference. So we should be careful anyway. All right. So yeah, I don't think that will make any difference, hopefully.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Matt, just another one. In terms of the archaeology pieces that I've been reading, and about the underground possible archaeological findings, can we be assured that there will be an officer on site who will be looking into all that as it progresses?
Hi, Councillor Nicholas. Yeah, you can rest assured that the conditions you see in the report have been agreed with the applicant, which is also obviously the council, so that they're prepared to have an archaeological officer on site, as well as an ecologist and a tree officer when those works are progressing.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Monk.
Sorry, I haven't taken my hand down from before.
Okay, and so if you can take your hand down, please. And the next speaker is Hulett.
Sorry, Chair, you went fuzzy there. Who's the next speaker?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're the next speaker, Cornelius.
Yeah, okay, right. Could I return, Mr. Doble, to the points that I raised earlier? is there an, I may have missed this, but is there an extant estimate for the reduction in the number of car journeys and associated carbon emissions that will take place because of the existence of the trail? And I think the point made by Councillor Monk was very useful, in that it's a linkage, it's part of a system. So is there an estimate available? And the second point, Natural England's concern about the Newlyn Downs special area of conservation. I mean, I couldn't see that what the mitigation was that had been agreed about the potentially damaging effects of leisure use and dog walkers.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Olivier. There's been no, in answer to the first question, there's been no estimate provided in terms of reductions in terms of that sort of switch from car-based journeys to cycle-based journeys. But what I would say is, obviously this is one part of a wider provision of infrastructure for cyclists and non-motor vehicles. So as in the report, it connects with the National Cycle Network Route 32. There are other trails which I mentioned in my presentation, so from Newlyn East to Carlin Cross, and there's also desires, I'm sure, out there for other future trails between different settlements of the county. So it's part of building that wider network, really, and it will take time to do that. In terms of Natural England and specifically Newlyn Downs, we have screened the application under the habitat regulations, and we've carried out that appropriate assessment and consulted Natural England. And part of those mitigation measures include provision of dog-proof fencing to either side of the former railway line, which is outside of Newlyn Downs. So it's the areas either side of the railway line that the special area of conservation. So to prevent sort of dogs wandering off the railway track into those areas, there'd be dog mesh-proof fencing, and also signage. So signage advising users of the special qualities and the habitats in that area, and how it's important that those fragile environments aren't entered into. And also as part of the LEMP, so the Landscape Ecology Management Plan, for that area, we will be looking for sort of a review mechanism in that area, so we can monitor once the trail is in operation there as to what impacts there are happening and whether we need to do any further measures.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I have to say in passing, Chair, that I do think an estimate of the type I asked for, of the potential for car journey reductions, would actually be a very useful and valuable piece of information if an estimate like that could be produced, even if it's difficult to be precise at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor John Dyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask Matthew Doble, you didn't show a slide of the one significant viaduct, sort of a Brunel style viaduct, just out of Midhiam station. It's quite a long Brunel type viaduct that I've been told locally has had considerable amounts of money spent on it. Is that viaduct within your current trail plan? And do you know how much money was spent on it, making sure it was a good sound viaduct? Because I know at one stage there was talk of demolition of the viaduct, but it's been preserved and it's got some rating. Thank you.
Hi, Councillor Don. I think you mentioned Midhiam, which Midhiam isn't part of this application route. The viaduct that is within this route is Cox Viaduct, obviously just outside of Cox, which is thought to be used, and as part of the works, will require maintenance and ongoing maintenance, which hopefully this scheme, once it's up and running, as you've heard, Highways will be maintaining the scheme. We'll be able to also make sure that structure is kept to a suitable standard as well.
So if I can come back, the one outside of Midhiam is not going to be used.
No, Midion's not part of this application route. It's Perranporth via Berlingy and Cox, Goonhaven, Fiddler's Green, just outside of St Newlyn East, and then on to Tanuki.
Yeah, I saw, and I misread the report. I saw this report as phase 1, and I would welcome this trail being taken all the way to Chasewater, because when you get to Chasewater and come out of the station, shut the station door if you like, you are on a spur of the Devon to Portreath tramway, and it would make an exciting journey for a family that hired a bed and breakfast or a caravan in Perranporth to have a week's fortnight's holiday without the infernal combustion engine and without therefore fumigation.
Councillor Dyer, we got to stick to the application got before us. We can't go talking about what's coming up or possibly coming up in the future. This is from Perranporth to Newquay. Okay. Councillor Nicholas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just something that jogged my memory. Because Matt was saying about dog-proof fencing along the farm areas. Are we letting dogs just roam all over these trails? Because how is that going to impact on A, people who might be frightened of dogs, and B, the mess? Are we going to guarantee that people are going to pick them up, or do we actually ask for them to be kept on leads?
Yeah, hi, Councillor Nicholas. Yeah, it is intended that dog walkers can access the trail. As part of the conditions, obviously we're recommending details of dog bins, so hopefully owners are responsible and you know, put their waste in the appropriate provision that will be provided. If dog owners do let their dogs off of leads, that's the reason for the dog proof fence in the dog mesh, is to stop dogs inadvertently diving off the trail and into those sensitive habitats where they could cause damage unwittingly. I take your point about users that may be you know, wary of dogs, but from my experience of sort of using trails where there's different users, dog walkers, cyclists with young children, the vast majority of people behave responsibly, so I wouldn't anticipate any problems in that area.
Okay, thanks. I was going to ask Chris because he's got his hand up. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chris Batters.
Yes, Matt, following on from Sue's questions with regards to the dogs. This is a situation we have at the Camel Trail regularly. It's unpoliceable, to be perfectly honest, with these dog owners, but it is of great concern. And having quite a lot of mileage of the Camel Trail coming through my division, it is a constant complaint about dog owners letting their dogs run. And of course, dogs and cyclists do not mix. And one leads to the other, and next thing you know, there's aggravation there. I appreciate it's virtually impossible to police, but I'm amazed you said you don't know of many issues on it, because I have reported this many, many times to Cormac about the problems that we do have in connection with the dogs on the Camel Trail. So I wouldn't say it's easy to manage, it's not, but it does happen, and it is a major concern in my area. Not a question, but I mean, if you can by all means give an answer to it. Okay.
Did you want to answer that, Matt?
Yeah, no, sorry, I was just unclicking my camera. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. From my experience of the trail close to where I live, I'm not aware of any issues, but I completely understand that potentially there could be issues. But as Councillor Batter says, it's very difficult to police, and we just have to trust in people to be responsible and you know, be kind to other users and considerate of other users. There will be signage proposed, and we can condition signage, and we can encourage obviously responsible behaviour through that. So I would look as part of any discharge of conditions for the signage to just make dog owners specifically aware of their responsibilities, both in terms of their behaviour and obviously waste as well.
Thank you for that. Next speaker is Adrian Parsons. Adrian.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, if all the questions have been asked, I just wanted to, the officer, raise a point for you, Chairman, that I have noticed Councillor Jeff Brown, portfolio holder for this area, has asked if it's possible for him to have a word at some point. I'm not sure if this can be done or if you can slip him in somewhere or if he even has a question, but I just wanted you to be aware of that.
I believe any Cornwall councillor can ask a question of officers. It's when we get into debate when they can't come in. That's correct, isn't it, Sarah?
Yes, Chairman. Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services. Yes, Chairman, it's up to you whether or not you'd allow the portfolio holder to speak.
If the portfolio holder wishes to speak, go put his hand up. Welcome, Jeff. You can speak now.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's not a question, which is why I've held off from putting my hand up, but it's just a few points, really. I do represent Newquay Central, which is at one end of the route, but I'm actually speaking as the portfolio holder responsible for delivering these schemes. And this is a critical scheme to enhance the economic recovery of the area and provides huge opportunities to improve the health and well-being of our community. It will reduce car journeys and provide safer routes for exercise, which is so much more critical now than it ever was before COVID-19. In terms of the concerns around Trewery Mill, as the officers have said, that isn't part of this planning application. That's going to be dealt with separately. But I am committed to try and find a way forward in this area, and I would review compulsory purchase as an absolute last resort. I'm hoping that we can find a solution before we have to resort to even considering that. I'm also happy to confirm that highways are committed to fund ongoing maintenance of the routes once they're established. And regarding biodiversity, having walked part of the route myself, I can confirm that many of the scrub trees to be removed have actually grown up through the track bed since the tracks were closed. But the majority of the canopy, with the larger, well-established trees growing on either side of the route, won't be affected. In fact, it will open up the route underneath the canopy so that will be beneficial for everyone. And with the additional planting, there will, as the officers have said, be a positive enhancement of high-quality trees. And I do hope that the committee see favourable to support this, but I do thank you for the rigorousness with which you've been questioning. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll bring in okay, Andrew.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I was just trying to give attention to the fact that I'm not sure that was really sensible to have done that, to have allowed Councillor Brown to speak at this point, especially in his role as portfolio holder. He's technically the applicant. I'd like to know if Ben can confirm that, please.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm not sure that he is the applicant. It's a council application, isn't it? And officers are down as the applicant.
Any going on the words that Councillor Brown just used?
I wasn't sure what he was going to say, but any member can speak, so that's fine. I mean, if members are in doubt, you know, you don't have to be swayed by anything that anybody says, do you? But I don't consider that Councillor Brown is the applicant. The officers are down as the applicant, and you know, any member can speak, and that's the problem, isn't it? Particularly with virtual meetings, you know, I don't know who's going to say what. I can't police it. So make of it what you will, I suppose, if you're in any doubt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brown. I was very happy to bring Jeff Brown in. I don't see him in the applicant either. So next speaker, Cornelius.
I presume you meant me.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Cornelius. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Just very briefly, it does sound like Mr. Kerno would like to be equipped with a mute button, just in case, right? But I I just wanted to put it to Jeff, though I wouldn't expect him to answer at this stage. Jeff, Councillor Brown, you know, is there any possibility of commissioning some research into how much car use and the associated carbon emissions will be reduced by the opening of this trail?
I think that was a question you put to this shelter to Bonnie, so that's been listened to and taken up. Okay, I'll bring in the next speaker now. Next speaker, does I have? Oh. Who's down next? Someone's hand's gone down now, so do you have any more questions of officers? I can't see any.
Sarah,
I'll now open up for debate.
Sorry, Chairman, we're having an issue taking people's hands down after they've put them up if they've forgotten. If your hand is still raised and you do not have a question to ask, could you please just take your hand down? Thank you. Sorry, Chairman.
That's right, there's no hands up on the screen now. So, there you go. Yeah, so we'll now open up for debate. Who wishes to start? Do you have anyone wishing to start the debate? Councillor Parsons. Councillor Parsons, you're indicating you wish to speak.
Thank you, Chairman.
First.
Thank you. I was hoping to hear someone else speak first, but as there were no other hands go up, I thought I'll kick it off. Following that, there's been a slight rush. Right, having listened to all the parties and given great weight to a lot of the arguments we've heard today, especially regarding the triple SSIs and the conservation areas, I feel this scheme has many benefits, which really probably in the balance of consideration do outweigh much of the harm. More so now than ever, as I think it's very important that we encourage people to get out and be active and enjoy our great Cornish countryside and all that this has to offer. It's good to see the biodiversity losses will be mitigated, hopefully, as they say, with a net gain. Of course, any loss is regrettable, but I think, as we've seen on page 35, with regards to the detail of the trees which are involved, like I say, any loss is regrettable, but I think if we get a replanting scheme in place that's correct, we could replace this with trees that will bring a far greater long-term benefit to the environment. Just by the nature of the route and its uniqueness, as we've heard, it's going to be difficult to please everyone. But I feel there's been a great deal of detail put into this by all involved, and I think really the planning officers should be congratulated to a certain extent for the efforts that they've put in. So, you know, for me, weighing everything up and the public benefits that this bring, I think, unless I am minded to hear any other strong arguments within this debate, I would be minded to support this scheme.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd be pleased to second it.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Dyer. Next speaker is Councillor Julian Rand.
Thank you very much, Chair. For some reason off my bar, Sarah, my hand thing has gone, my symbol, I don't know why. But if you press the three dots, something comes up to give you that permission, just in case anyone's having that issue. Like the previous speaker said, I think overall, weighing it in the balance, this is an amazing scheme, I would say, and I think the officers involved should be commended on their efforts, the detail, etc., etc. My concerns really are about the treatment of those individuals who neighbour this new route and maybe are inconvenienced or adversely affected. I would like to hope that we can do some sympathetic and careful negotiations with them. Also picking up on Councillor Nicholas is quite right to mention particularly the public toilets and the things that would affect disabled access, people like that. Can we try as much as possible to make sure that people don't have to go too far to have access to a public convenience? We've talked about dog bins. Let's make sure that the humans are looked after as well. But overall, with those one or two concerns in the back of my mind, I'm very, very happy to support this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Rand. Can you lower your hand now? Councillor Nicholas?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with this scheme as well. I mean, my concerns, as most people know, if you know, who are on planning committees with me, it's about trees and making sure that our environments are still secure and safe for the future. And listening to Alan and the way that he has a vision for it, I think it was really encouraging. Also, that if you look on paragraph 75, 76, 77, it says about the symptoms of some of the trees of ash dieback and things. So I'm quite reassured that these are all being dealt with. And I would follow in Councillor Rand's views that we need to look at providing facilities along there for people that have a disability and little kids. I mean, little children, if we're encouraging them, they don't always actually hold needing to go to the toilet, do they? You know, when they want to go, they want to go. So as do older men and people. So I think that really needs to be considered as well on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for that. You make me want to go now. What happens, I've got two trails in my patch, Coast to Coast Trail and Great Flat Low Trail. What happens is that you'll have businesses set up, they will provide those provisions. It does really work, and it's local people that benefit mostly from this. If you can lower your hand, please, Sue. Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, you should be able to hear me. It's difficult to estimate the actual carbon reduction by car use, but to go back to this principle of this trail, every time people are on the trail, they are reducing their car journeys. So it will be, as the Camel Trail has proven over many years, lead to the reduction of many journeys by car. So that has got to be a plus. The thing I'm anxious about and rather concerned about are the changes bed was 18 miles from Chasewater to Newquay. I know you're going to shut me up because this is only phase one, but I hope it is phase one and that we go from Perranporth to Chasewater to link up with the Devon to Portreath tramway, because there are many advantages, and once you're in Chasewater you can go on quiet lanes to Victoria Square in Truro, and from there you can catch, if the tide is right, a boat to St Mawes or Falmouth. Think about the extensive journeys this trail in its enhanced form could lead to the joyous advantage of tourism, which we've got to accept is a major contributor to Cornwall's economic environment, and we need the tourists, although they curse me when I'm trying to go up a road with a tractor, and I curse them when I got to wait in a junction, and so on. But we do need each other, and we do need to support this scheme. But please cut out the slopes and the climbs out of a cutting onto your trail that is not on the railway line, because the branch line was 18 miles level walking, level cycling, level for children from Chasewater to Newquay, and that should be our ultimate aim. Thank
you, John. I totally agree with you, but we've just got to deal with this application first, and then hopefully in years to come it'll progress on.
Well, it's only phase one.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Dyer. Next speaker, Malcolm Brown.
Yes, Chairman. I just wanted to say briefly, I think that Councillor Dyer's contribution has been particularly helpful to us. I think it's been unfortunate that because of interests and other reasons, there haven't been the local members available to take part in this meeting to give us some detailed comments. I think we've had to rely upon our own individual knowledge plus our impressions of what we've seen. My conclusion is that the arguments for supporting the application as it is are very strong, and I will support a proposition to approve as recommended. Having said that, one reason I asked Mr. Curnow the question I did is that points have arisen during the course of the debate which I don't think ought to impede the granting of the planning permission, but do reflect the ongoing involvement that landowners and others wish to have following the grant of this planning permission. And I think the mood of the planning committee today seems to be, in my opinion, rightly, that officers and everybody else have to operate within the law, and that probably affects compensation, compulsory purchase and all the rest of it. But I think the mood of members has been that we have listened respectfully to the comments of members of the public and Councillor Yeo when they've spoken, and I think we would all hope that after passing this application that the steps to be implemented will be done in a way which will enhance the reputation of Cornwall Council as much as possible. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I noticed John Dyer's got his hand up again. Did you wish to speak again, John? His hand's come down now. I have no other speakers on this one, so we have a proposer and seconder, but we do have an amended
Democratic Services.
addendum.
Chairman, sorry, can I just double check that Councillor Parsons did want to propose the recommendation? He didn't specifically say, just for the record.
Thank you, Sarah. I actually didn't, but I'm more than happy to.
Thank you, Councillor Parsons.
And we did have a seconder, didn't we? Which was Councillor John Dyer.
Councillor John Dyer was the seconder, yes, Chairman.
Right. Okay, and we have the recommendation. We got our paperwork here, but we also have the recommendation in the addendum that was sent through, which does have is a little bit different to what we got on our papers, isn't it?
Chairman, can I bring in Matt Doble, the planning officer, just to clarify the proposal that's in front of you from officers today?
Exactly. Yeah. On Matt.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. No problem. I can do that. So yeah, you're right, Councillor Cashmere. The recommendation has been updated in the addendum. So what we're now recommending is delegated authority to approve the application be granted to the Service Director for Planning and Sustainable Development to proceed with issuing the decision once the planning casework unit has concluded their assessment that an EIA is not required, and that recommendation for approval is subject to the conditions as set out in the committee report, but with slightly amended wording to conditions 11, 12 and 16, and additional conditions 20, 21 and 22, which are detailed in the addendum update.
Okay, thank you for that. Everyone clear on that? Councillor Dye's got his hand up again. Did you wish to speak?
Can I ask, Mr. Chairman, that Matt Doble does that in consultation with the local members all the way along the 18 miles of, well, the miles of track from Perranporth to Newquay, because that will exclude me.
Okay, you heard that, Matt?
Yeah, the members
will be included.
The local members have been included all the way along. So what is Councillor Dyer asking me to just inform them before we issue the decision?
Discuss with them, and then if they're happy, issue the decision on their section.
We would be making a decision on the application as a whole, and we take it to committee, and all the local members are aware of that and have been given the opportunity to speak and provide comments in writing, so they're all aware of the recommendation within their area.
Yeah, well, within the Central Planning Committee, the officer cannot approve without the blessing of the local member, and that's the way it should be.
Chairman, Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services Officer. Can I just bring in Ben here? Thank you very much.
I was just going to clarify. So it's the committee, isn't it, that are making the decision? It's not the local member. So the local members have been involved right along, and they were able to participate today as well. And obviously we do have some interest issues. But I think I agree with what Mr. Doble has said. It's the decision's being made today, isn't it? We couldn't then go back. So I think we need to be clear on that.
Could I just say as well, normally we involve the local ward members where there's some kind of conditioned discharge or additional details coming in. That's not the case here. It's the Secretary of State's just considering whether or not we're correct in not requiring an environmental statement. So we're not going to get any further information. We're not adding conditions or getting any further detail. So there isn't that consultation required of the local ward members.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Sue Nicholas.
Yeah, no, I think I support John, because at the end of the day, although we're giving permission to approve the application, whatever's coming alongside it, and especially seeing there's going to be negotiations on various other bits, I do think that it should include, discussion, negotiation with the local members.
I think, again, just to be clear, we're not negotiating anything else further as part of this planning application. Those other negotiations and land ownership issues are separate from this and not part of this scheme.
Yeah, and to come back in, Chair, Ben from Legal. No, I absolutely agree with Mr. Stevenson there. So Councillor Nicholas, yeah, those negotiations, as we've said, and as Councillor Brown really, I think, summed up really helpfully, they're quite separate, aren't they? So we've heard about them today, and I think it's probably informed us that they are separate from what we're doing, and they'll continue.
All right, thank you for that. Councillor Adrian Parsons.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to be clear, I wanted it to be known that if I'm proposing this application now, I'm proposing it as is set out by the officer's recommendation. Okay, I just don't see how we can go back to the divisional member.
Yeah. Okay, don't want to muddy the waters. Councillor Andrew Long.
I was just going to support what Councillor Parsons just said. I think it's I think we should go to the vote based on that, and if he needs a seconder with it as is, then I would happily do that. But I'm sure John Dyer would be content as well.
Okay, thank you. I think we are going to the vote now, and we are the Strategic Planning Committee. So the decisions we make today will move this programme forward. So all ready to vote now? Are you going to take it?
Yes, Chairman, for completeness, can I just have John Dyer for the record say he's happy to recommend the officer's second the officer's recommendation as has been set out.
Yes, I won't fall out about it, but
thank you, Councillor Dyer. Thank you, Councillor Dyer. I'll now go to the vote on a roll call. Please, can you state if you are for, against, or abstaining on the recommendation that has been proposed by Councillor Parsons and seconded by Councillor Dyer. Councillor Bastin.
For.
Councillor Batters.
For.
Malcolm Brown.
For.
Bull.
For.
Dyer.
For.
Councillor Evans isn't with us. Councillor Foot.
For.
Councillor Greenslade.
For.
Hurd.
For.
Kasmarak.
For.
Long.
For.
Nicholas.
For.
Olivier.
For.
Parsons.
For.
And Rand.
For.
As chairman, I can confirm that that has been unanimously agreed.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for taking part in what I call a really good debate today. So thank you for that. Item 6 on the agenda is any other business that the chairman considers to be of urgency. I have none, so I wish you all well and have enjoy the rest of your day during the first day of lockdown.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.